Good morning, guys. It's Casey LaPierre again here. I've decided to do something that I normally wouldn't do. I'm doing a little impromptu episode for the Intelligent Design Hoof Care podcast. And the reason I'm doing that is because it's such a beautiful day out here. I just wanted to talk about environment a little bit. You know, whenever I hold a class on applied equine podiatry, we start to discuss environment for our horses. And one of the things that we discuss is in reference to the definition of applied equine podiatry. Well, the definition of applied equine podiatry is actually the conscientious study of the equine foot, always striving to expose it to the proper environmental stimuli, making every effort to promote proper structure and function as we progress in achieving high performance. It's accepting the fact that the horse does have the innate ability to heal itself, but domestication has broken that golden rule of do no harm. Okay, it comes down to environment. So when I ask a new student to describe the environment of their horse, I usually get the same description of the environment. They talk about their turnout 24/7. They're in, they're on 2 or 3 acres of pasture, or they're in mud and it's very wet, or basically they talk about the topography of the environment where the horse is living. Okay, and then I'll present a question to them. I'll ask them, I'll say, okay, let's take a look at environment from this perspective. If you were the horse and you were using your 5 senses to describe the environment, what would you actually be describing? Well, that comes down to what does the horse exposed to every day? What does it see every day? What does it hear every day? What kind of exercise? What's its diet? All of that is involved in environment. And I like to point out the environment for my horses. Okay, I'm here in Florida. So, I've got about 15 acres here. And this is in Florida, and we're in our dry season. Right now, we're talking about, we don't get any rain probably until April. So it's very dry. This is Bahia grass. Okay, so that's our actual environment. But I have 6 horses here. Okay, so I'm going to go out in front in a little bit here and show you another paddock that I have out in front in our barn. And yes, they are out 24/7. They come in the morning, and we groom them, and we feed them early in the morning so that we can groom them, and in the afternoon. But for the most part, this is where they're at. They're out all the time. So the environment for each one of those horses is actually very different. You saw in the background right there, I have a Friesian. Okay, so I'll tell you about let's just take a look and see. Okay, let's turn that around. So I've got a Friesian. He's a 22-year-old Friesian, and I have a 8-year-old. I have an 8-year-old quarter horse. I have a 22-year-old thoroughbred that we've had since she was 2 years old. We have 2 minis. Okay, we have a 30. I think he's 34 years old right now, and his son, which is 22 years old. And we have a 34-year-old Pasifino. So we've got a very broad spectrum of breeds and horses on this farm that we keep. A lot of them are rescues, and we keep them for rehabilitation and that type of thing. They're kind of retired. But each one of their environment is different. Even though you saw that I have all this acreage, well, it's not a lot of acreage, but I've got, their turnout. They're all on the same acreage is what I'm trying to say. But that doesn't mean their environment is all the same, okay? For instance, my Friesian is pretty laid back, whereas my thoroughbred, she's very, very an A-type, okay? So she's always on the move. And what we have behind us, okay, property borders about 1,300 acres of cattle in the back here, and as a result of that, she changes her routine, pretty much daily, because if something's going on back there, she's always on patrol back here. She's always moving along the fence. She's very hype. Whereas my Pasifino, he's lowest on the pecking order, and he has suffered equine digital osteoarthritis in the past. So he's very low on the pecking order, which means the other horses can stress him out. So his environment is completely different than my thoroughbred. completely different than my Friesian. And then I look at my, my 8-year-old quarter horse. Okay, so, here's a youngster amongst a bunch of, geriatrics. And, he likes to push them around. And so we always have to watch how how they're interacting in this environment, because that's such a huge part of caring for these horses. When it comes to hoof care, we want to make sure that these horses are always hydrated properly, and they're always getting the proper nutrition, proper exercise. Well, when I look at something like my Pasifino, I explain that, him being lowest on the pecking order, he's the last to get to the water. He'll go off into the corner of this acreage, and he'll sleep most of the day off in the corner to stay away from the other horses, because they're constantly pushing him. So that's where he feels safest. But that means he's not getting to the water the way he should be. Okay, so we have to make sure that he's always hydrated. So we give him soaked hay cubes so that he stays hydrated. Okay, and we always make sure that he's drinking, and we have a separate water tank for him off in the corner so that he's getting hydrated. When it comes to my minis, I've got both of these minis are turned out on this acreage, eating this grass, 24/7. And they have the most beautiful feet. They really do. And they're constantly moving around. Like I said, 34 and 22-year-old. My 22-year-old, he's overweight, so he doesn't get any feed whatsoever. He just grazes, and that's it. And that's his environment. So you have to be aware of it when you have multiple horses in your herd. If you have a client that has multiple horses and you're having problems with one particular horse, check out the environment for that horse. And I'm not talking looking out and seeing that they're in mud paddocks or whatever the case may be. Do a little investigation. Ask them about the pecking order. Ask them about how that horse interacts with the rest of the herd. Find out what their true environment is. Okay, so that's really all I wanted to do on this little episode, was to give you an idea of that. I'm going to turn this around and show you what I'm talking about here. As I said, we have to feed hay in the wintertime here, because this grass, it dies off in the wintertime, and it's being Bahia grass. It has very little nutritional value. So we feed hay, and we'll bring in a round bale for them. So as I said, this is the front paddock. We come up here to the front paddock, and this is where they like to hang out. They've got a nice big live oak tree for canopy over here. And if you look over in the corner, remember I told you my little old Pasifino, that's where he likes to stay. So, when it comes to movement or getting to the water, being the lowest on the pecking order, that's a problem for him. So I have to be aware of that when I'm working on this horse. Okay? Well, 8-year-old quarter horse I was talking about, and some of you may have seen the video on Echo. It's a little miracle horse. He was actually a rescue for navicular disease and navicular syndrome, and we've been working on him. It's just a year. He's been here just a year, and he's sound and doing pretty well. And there's my Friesian. You can see underneath the tree here. Okay, so they get to roam the property, but that's only one really small part of the environment. Okay, so yes, they've got their shade, and I don't know if you saw as I was coming into the paddock, we've got a water trough out there. So there's the 22-year-old thoroughbred. The old gray mare, is that what we're going to call her, the old gray mare now? Because they're getting a pretty heavy coat. And that's another thing we have to be aware of here in Florida is, we have horses that develop a pretty heavy coat in the wintertime, but the temperatures will go from, the low 30s at night and get up into the 60s and 70s during the day sometimes. So that can be a major problem. So, That's the 22-year-old, and one as wide as he is tall. I don't see Poppy here. So the 34-year-old Mini isn't out here right now, but I'm glad you can see the old Pasofino over there in the corner, as I was saying. So that's his environment. That's where he goes to feel safe. It's where he goes to relax. But I have to make sure he's getting to the water all the time. Okay? And then we have so every one of them, even though it looks like it's the same environment for all of them, it's actually not. Okay? It's actually, a different environment for every single one of them. And I don't know where Poppy is. Okay? So that's a little heads up on, how we look at environment and what we look at for applied equine podiatry when we talk about environment. And so here is actually my 34-year-old little Mini, and I just want to zoom in on his feet so you can see. This is a 34-year-old Mini, okay, that we have here, and he's got actually beautiful feet. And he's holding his weight, and he's doing really well. And he's out here, like I said, 24/7. And again, I can't stress it enough. One of the most important parts of the environment is hydration, particularly when it comes to the equine foot. Okay, so you can see, he roamed up here. This is one of our water troughs, and we got another one there. And we have another one there, and we have one down there that's going into the other paddock that I just came from, and we've got two out in the big paddock. So it's really important, if you want to keep good feed on a horse, is that you make sure they're hydrated. I know that can be difficult sometimes because, if you're using tanks like this and you've got a herd like this, you have to be aware of each individual horse. Because you never know how much they're drinking. Okay, so I always check them for hydration. Okay, so if you guys are familiar with checking for most people, when they go to check for hydration, they'll come up. It's okay, Poppy. He says, I'm done. I'm out of here. Okay, Pop, you go ahead. Okay, come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. All right, just stand up. Come here. All right, so I'm going to turn this around again. Okay. All right. So what is it most people do when they're checking for hydration? Poppy, it's okay. Come here. Come here. They got to pinch and see if it sticks out. But, I mean, he's got a winter coat. It's going to be difficult to tell. Well, one way to check, we know he's hydrated because he was just drinking, but is to actually take that upper lip, which I'm not going to put him through right now. All right. So is to take the upper lip and just grab his muzzle and pull the upper lip and lift it up, and there should be froth under there. Okay. So I do that on a regular basis to make sure, particularly on that Pasofino, and I will on on these little guys because they get pushed around sometimes by our other horses. If you just take into consideration, the true environment, not just simply where the horses turned out. When I started applied equine podiatry, I was a farrier in New York, actually. Yes, and I was doing work in New York City and in Brooklyn. And in fact, in my first book, The Chosen Road, there's some images of myself and my apprentice actually trimming horses, actually tied to the wall of an apartment building, because these horses that we were taking care of they were in standing stalls. And so there was about a dozen horses kept in the basement of this apartment building, which had been converted to a stable. And there's, a dozen standing stalls. The only turnout they had was across the street, which was a vacant lot. So there was no pasture. They were ridden on the weekends in the park. Okay. That's usually the exercise they got. So when I started with applied equine podiatry, starting developing our theories on foot function and how to keep a foot healthy in domestication, that's where I was coming from. How could we keep these horses that are kept in domestication healthy? Okay, and as time has progressed, we understand that we can. I mean, even in those, I mean, that's a really harsh environment when you think about it. I remember when I was over in England, I was invited to tour Old Scotland Yard, which is the stables for the mounted police in London. And, you know, those horses don't get a whole lot of turnout, and it's the same type of environment. So you have to take that into consideration when you start working on these horses. Well, that's about it. You know, I hope you guys will subscribe to this channel, and you know, we'll talk more about this. I just thought it just was on my heart this morning. It's a beautiful sunny morning here, you know, in Florida, and I want to talk about environment from that perspective, understanding that when you have a herd, there's much more to it than just simple what's the horse, what's its living environment, what is its true living environment. Okay, you know, when things change around here and these horses get stressed because there's stuff going on out in the back pasture here, or you know, even when one of my horses isn't feeling well, the other horses respond to it. So those are the kind of things that you have to take into consideration, even if you're a professional. When you're a professional with multi-horses in a barn, okay, don't just look at their environment, ask them questions. Okay, so that's the best advice I can give. All right, guys, have a blessed day. We'll talk to you again soon. Be sure to subscribe to the channel.